Are we okay now?
Just give me a second, Chair. Okay, we're live now, Chairman. Chair, yes, we're live now.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, councillors, officers, members of the public and press. Welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee on the 18th of March, the final meeting of the municipal year. This meeting is a remote meeting being live streamed and recorded. I'll hand over to Democratic Services team. Dave?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'll just start the meeting by means of a quick roll call of our members present this morning. Can you please indicate, members, if you can see and hear everybody on the live stream, and also that you have a copy of today's agenda. I'll start with Councillor Buchan.
Yes to all.
Thank you, Bob. Councillor Cassidy.
Yes to all.
Thank you, Tom. Chairman.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yes, I've got everything. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. I believe, as the Chairman has indicated earlier, that Councillor Harrison may be joining us later on in the meeting. We have apologies from Councillor James and Councillor Lyons. I also believe we have online Councillor Tony Richardson.
Yes, Dave.
Thank you. It looks as though we're not being joined this morning by any of our co-opted members, Claire Wilson or Parish Councillors Littlefair or O'Brien. I don't believe they've joined us this morning. No, by the looks of it, I think, and I don't think we've got a representative from the police with us this morning either. If anyone's joined? No? Okay. That concludes the roll call there, Chairman, and if we can return to yourself for the rest of the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Apologies for absence. I think we two apologies, I think, Dave.
We have, Chair, yes. Councillors James and Lyons.
Thanks. To receive any declarations of interest by members? Not up to now. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of February 2021. Have you got the minutes? All members have got the minutes.
Yes.
Okay, we can approve those.
Yes.
Thanks very much. So we rearranged some of the agenda items. The first presentation is 6.1, Coronavirus and Hartlepool update. Over to Craig.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for rearranging to fit me in. I'll just see if I can put the presentation and share that on the screen. If the technology works. Can everyone see that now?
Yes.
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 Excellent. Is that okay? Great. Okay. Yes, so thank you very much for inviting me to present this today. I think some of you may have already seen this presentation this week, but it comes with a slightly additional, some better news as well from when I was presenting this earlier on in the week. Our case rates have continued to decline from January. It's been a very reasonably positive picture from then, as you'll probably recall that we saw a rate of around 780 to 800 per 100,000 7-day rate, which was significantly higher than the England average. And that's come down on that graph there. I think the latest data shown on there is around about 117 per 100,000. What we've seen over the last week or so is it plateauing out. The continued fall hasn't dropped very significantly, but I think one interesting point was that the latest data I received yesterday showed that we had actually dropped below 100 per 100,000. We were around about 97 for the previous 7 days. I think that's still, I think I have to stress, that's still very high in terms of the numbers of cases, but is much positive. I think we still need to look at the data as we progress going on because I think if you look at the England data there, it's showing 58 where we were at 117, and I suspect the England data has also dropped in terms of the latest data we had. But again, I think that second slide shows on a weekly basis that you can see that plateauing at the very right-hand side there. It's not the most up-to-date data we have because that's weekly, and we'll get that by the end of the week. But again, I think it's suggesting some slightly more positive news there. We will obviously be looking at that closely and monitoring it, because we have, as I say, had quite a considerable amount of time around about the 120 mark, and it didn't seem to be coming down. It was quite persistent. One of the issues we were anticipating was seeing a spike because of schools going back last week. I think what we've seen is that's been steady, the number of cases we've been identifying, and that hasn't caused at the moment any sort of major increases in the number of positive cases we've seen. I think it seems to have remained at a very similar place to where it was previously, which is interesting because previously schools didn't have all children in at that point in time, but they do now. So that may be a positive trend that we hope will continue. That's not to say we aren't seeing cases coming through, but they do seem to be reasonably steady and not increasing. The death rate is leveling off as well. We haven't seen as many deaths. And again, I think that follows with, as the numbers come down, we'll see fewer deaths. And also, I think, reflects the vaccinations, again, within the older, more vulnerable populations as well. As you can see from that graph, we're still quite a lot higher than the England figures. But again, I think that shows, I mean, the graphs here from October onwards, but I think that has been consistently the rate across the whole of the period of time in the pandemic. So looking at the distribution of cases, again, it seems to be a very similar picture. And I think probably where we have higher numbers in the population, we'll see more cases coming up. So again, it's a picture that we've seen before and are aware of. But obviously we continue to monitor it and see. So the darker red colours there are the higher rates within the population, and you can see some parts of Hartlepool are rates that are lower than that 100, but obviously some are higher.
It's a massive difference, Craig, from St. Carew and the North Hartlepool.
It is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we obviously monitor that has been quite consistent over time, and again I think it relates to populations and various other factors around that. And as you can see, the Central Belt sort of has higher levels as well, and that has been reflected quite a long way through the pandemic. So if we move on to testing, one of the things we can see there is it's quite strong testing. And again, you can see that Seton Carew there has quite a high proportion of tests, high rate of tests rather. And again, I think one of the things to flag up is that we've seen quite a concerted effort to increase the number of people getting tested in the last few weeks. So, for example, the schools, when they have gone back, all staff in schools are now taking lateral flow tests, or are asked to take lateral flow tests. We're testing the children more, and now the household bubbles are able to get tested as well. So we're seeing an awful lot more people using lateral flow devices. There are some challenges with that. I think our lateral flow devices are supposed to be used for asymptomatic testing, but we're seeing some elements of symptomatic testing, and always take the opportunity to remind people that if they have symptoms, it's the PCR tests they need to be taking and booking those tests. We are still seeing people obviously coming through the PCR testing. So we have our local testing sites still. And also the mobile units that visit for the marina. We have our, again, for the lateral flow testing, which is asymptomatic testing, community testing at Millhouse. I think what we are seeing is those people visiting Millhouse are declining, and I think that may be a reflection of the number of people who are testing in schools, and also businesses are now encouraged to provide testing for their staff. So I think the lateral flow testing, I think the aim is to make that much more widespread for people. It does come with its challenges, as I've mentioned before, but I think it is reflected in some of the numbers that we are seeing much higher levels of testing. And again, that may be go part of the way to explain why our numbers have plateaued around about the 120s for that such a length of time. I'm hoping that as we are starting to see them fall, but testing may be one of the elements that it is positive that if we do more testing, we find more people, because we are able then to get them to isolate and break those chains of transmission. So I don't think it's to be seen completely in the negative that the numbers are as they are. Obviously, in terms of vaccination, these are the percentages of the population by middle super output area again who've been vaccinated. I think Hartlepool's had a very strong showing in terms of the vaccination process, and I think again we're starting to see in the older age groups the results of that combined with the lockdown. The numbers that we're seeing coming through, particularly in the 80+ age group, there have been several days where we've seen no cases at all, and I think that's a real positive as well. And I think the fact that it's been rolled out so quickly within Hartlepool and also before Christmas has really benefited the rates that we're seeing. And that just gives you an indication of the proportion as we've seen there. So clearly, obviously, the first batches of people that were vaccinated, the 80+, and then those older age groups will be stronger because in terms of the percentages you're seeing there, and as the others are coming online, you'll see that the numbers are slightly less, but that's obviously because the time hasn't had the time to get through everybody. But I think they're still starting to show strong numbers there from this week. And again, the over 50s came online yesterday as well. So we'll start to see those numbers starting to strengthen as well. And looking at the bar on the far right, that's around about a third of the population then have received their first vaccination. So again, that's very positive news. And there's just an indication from our colleagues at the CCG have shown where the current vaccination sites are for information. That's the last slide. I'm happy to take any questions if I can try and get this off presenting.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions? The question I've got, Craig, on the vaccinations. Several countries have banned the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. I don't know the reasons, but is it political or medical?
The countries that have put a pause on using the AstraZeneca vaccine sort of raised issues around. It was a medical reason around thrombosis, and I think they took what has been a very cautious approach. I think the information we've got from government is very clear about the continued use of AstraZeneca vaccines in this country. I have got my vaccination appointment next week, and I'm very happy to have an AstraZeneca vaccine as well. So I think the message going out there is not for people not to be concerned and to still turn up for the vaccinations as well. I think it's unfortunate that some of the countries have taken that action, but I think it's a different regime they're looking at there. But I would encourage anyone who's has an appointment for that to take that appointment and still to turn up for their vaccination.
Thanks, Craig. Brenda, welcome.
Thank you, Jed. It's and I've got here earlier than I thought, so thank you very much, and apologies for being late, but I've been to another meeting. I mentioned this in a previous meeting to Craig, and I'm very what's the word? Satisfied really with. I'm hoping actually when you said that the government are clear, I'm hoping that information comes from the medical professionals and the scientists. Yeah,
it does. Yes,
rather than the government. Yeah, who aren't experts in this field. And having already had my AstraZeneca, I will be going for the second one without any problem. But I did raise the fact that, I think there will be some people who might just feel a little bit concerned about it. And that reassurance just needs to be given, I think. And I think Karen actually said that there was something going out from the NHS to actually make people feel a little bit better and to give them the right information. So that's good. But the question I was going to ask, getting to it, is actually to do with the testing in schools. I just wondered how it was going. I understand that schools are actually responsible for that for a while, and then am I right in thinking that the pupils will be given their own testing and they will do it themselves? And how do you see that rolling out, Craig?
Yes, that's right. It's secondary schools only. That primary school children aren't being tested at the moment. Secondary school are providing 3 tests 3 to 4 days apart for their pupils when they come back into school, and I'm thinking that's probably about finishing this week. And then pupils are expected to test themselves at home and are being given test kits to do that. The idea behind that is that the 3 tests will give them the opportunity to test themselves and become expert at it under supervision, and then they'll be able to go home and test themselves. The indications we've got coming back from the schools, I think there's been challenges. I think I alluded to some misconceptions within the presentation there. I think this is clearly the tests are for asymptomatic testing. So if you don't have symptoms, I think what we're finding is sometimes people are using the tests to test people who do show symptoms. And then if they have a negative, the problem with that is if they have a negative test, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are negative. And the PCR test is much more accurate in that respect with symptomatic people. So the idea is that if you do have symptoms, don't use the lateral flow tests, go and have a PCR test. And we need to stress that enough. But we do, we're getting cases coming through, and we are getting more people than we would have probably expected because they are asymptomatic, and we are recording the fact that they are asymptomatic. So it is picking up cases that we wouldn't necessarily have picked up before. So I think there is a positive with that, because it does mean we are able now to stop that chain of transmission, but also put into place bubbles, the isolation of the bubbles. And, there is the potential that might be leading to limiting the spread in the community, which leads to the numbers we've seen today.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig.
A couple of radio podcasts a couple of days ago, Craig, about the easing off vaccinations in the UK because of supply and demand. Is that right?
It is, but I would have to pass that over to my NHS colleagues, because I'm not. I do know, I'm aware of the fact, but I'm not. I don't have the detail of that, so I don't know if Karen is able to pick up that point.
Well, thanks very much. Any questions? No. Thanks very much, Craig. Well, very welcome and very erudite. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. That's great. Right. We move on to audit items. Mazar's report, audit strategy memorandum. Is Gavin doing that?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. The first of our items is the audit strategy memorandum for the 2020-21 audit. I'm going to briefly present that. So the page 5 of our report summarises the engagement and the responsibilities that we have. But as we also always like to do when we're talking about our responsibilities, we also highlight on that page the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance, which are the primary responsibilities around producing the financial statements and making arrangements to prevent and detect fraud and corruption, and to ensure compliance with law and regulations, and to ensure there's a good, solid internal control framework in place. But what we do highlight on there is the 2 main areas of our work are the audit opinion that we give on the financial statements, and also the work that we do around assessing the arrangements that you have in place to secure economy, efficiency and effectiveness in the use of your resources, something which has traditionally been called the value for money conclusion. There are some changes to that this year, and I'll mention that when I get to that part of our report. The next thing that I would like to highlight, I don't normally refer to our photographs on page 7. I like to move swiftly past those, but members will notice that there's been a change in the engagement manager on the audit. Kath Andrew has been the engagement manager for a number of years now, but due to some staffing changes, we've had to make a change on this audit. And the new engagement manager on the audit is Ross Woodley, so you'll get to see Ross Woodley at these meetings in due course. Officers know Ross quite well because Ross has worked as the engagement manager on Cleveland Fire Authority audit, so we're hoping that will ensure that it's a smooth transition, that change in engagement manager. So moving swiftly on from the photographs, which I never like to dwell on, to the audit scope, approach and timetable, and I refer in particular to our quadrant diagram on page 10 of our report, which sets out the audit timetable. In the top left, we have the planning stage, which we're just about completed. We've completed all our early planning work, and that's how we're able to share this audit strategy memorandum. We have interim work, which is sort of based around doing early testing, and that's timetabled for February to April. And then the main fieldwork stages of the audit, when we've got your financial statements, are in the period July to September, with completion planned at the moment for the end of September. So just to explain that timetable, because members will recall that last year the timetable was extended due to the pandemic to the end of November. And that was from a previous timetable that referenced the end of July as the period by which the audit of the accounts needed to be completed. There's been a change again this year, and that arises from the Redmond review, which indicated that the end of July timetable just was not achievable. And government has responded to that by extending the timetable to the end of September for the next 2 years, and then it will be reviewed after that. And there's also been a recent change in the timetable for the production of the accounts this year, and that's been extended from the end of May to the end of July. So I think plans are to still work towards the end of May deadline for the production of your statements, but officers do have the option to take more time if they need it, which may well be the case because we're sort of still experiencing the impact of the pandemic, and so are your officers in terms of their workload and working remotely and all the rest of it. So some changes in the timetable. And I think it's important for me to highlight at this stage that the completion timetable by the end of September is going to be very challenging for us as auditors, because audits ran till the end of November last year, and in fact PSA has reported that only 45% of audits were completed by the end of November, which means that a sort of significant number are outstanding. And I know we produced a sort of slightly late opinion for you because of the issues around sort of pension fund assurance, but that was just early December. But a number of audits, a sort of large number of audits went on much longer than that, which has created a backlog of work. And this has impacted on all audit firms. And in addition, we're having some recruitment and retention issues, which mean that the timetable for the end of September is really challenging. So we're trying to plan to deliver on that basis at the moment. And if there are any sort of issues that mean that we can't achieve that timetable, we'll let officers know and this committee know in due course as soon as we can, if there are issues identified. But the mere fact that the deadline is sort of 2 months earlier than last year in itself makes it a very challenging thing to achieve. So I just wanted to make that really clear to members of the committee. So moving on in the audit strategy memorandum, as part of our audit approach, we always look to identify significant risk areas. And these aren't risks in the sense that we expect a problem with the council's arrangements. They're really risks because of the nature or significance of the area under review. So in our report, we've identified 3 significant risks. They're the same significant risks that we identified last year, so there's no change there. And those are the risks of management override of controls, risks around the pension liability disclosures, and also the valuation of property, plant and equipment and associated assets. And we've set out in the report the reasons why we think they're significant risks and our planned response to them. But I don't propose to go through that now, but I'd be quite happy to take any questions if members had any questions at the end. The other key area of our work is the work that we do around value for money, which I always start by clarifying that that's not a judgment on whether the council provides value for money. It's a review of arrangements that you have in place to ensure that you use your resources economically, efficiently and effectively. There's a change in this aspect of the audit this year. Every 5 years, the Code of Audit Practice, which we abide by, is reviewed. The National Office controls the Code of Audit Practice, and this is a new Code of Audit Practice year, so the code has been revised with effect from 2020-21. It's revised every 5 years. It's approved by both Houses of Parliament. Most aspects of the code are pretty much unchanged, but one key area of change is around the work on value for money. I'll just explain some of the key changes to you. Firstly, there will no longer be what's been described as a binary conclusion on value for money. So members will recall that in previous years when we've given our conclusion on value for money, we have, in your case, concluded that we've given an unqualified conclusion in relation to your value for money arrangements. In other places, some other places, we give a qualified conclusion, which means we've identified issues that we need to report as an exception or an adverse conclusion. That's all gone under the new approach. There won't be an unqualified or qualified value for money conclusion. The report will be in the form of a narrative report, which sets out our conclusion on your arrangements in relation to the key criteria that are followed. So that is a significant change. The scope of the work is quite similar. There are still 3 criteria that we report under. 2 are pretty much the same as previous. That's financial sustainability, where there's been quite a lot of focus in recent years. Governance, that continues to be an area of focus. But there are changes in the 3rd criteria. The 3rd criteria is now clarified as arrangements that the council has to improve its economy, efficiency and effectiveness. So it's about how the council uses information about its costs, about its performance, to manage and improve the way that it manages and delivers its services. So it's really about performance management, about how the council goes about sort of delivering its objectives. So I hope members will sort of agree that that's a useful sort of scope and change in clarification of the area of scope of our review. But it does mean that sort of there is more work for us to do looking at those arrangements, and it is a sort of new area. So in terms of the value for money conclusion, they are the main changes. The guidance that we've received from National Audit Office that underpins the code, there's been some delays in issuing that guidance. The guidance is actually still under review by the National Audit Office as to whether some interim arrangements need to be put in place to, because it's quite a challenge to do this additional work in the current circumstances. So that's still under review. So we haven't completed our sort of full range of planning around the value for money conclusion yet. We'll report on that in future to this committee. We have looked at, we've had discussions with management, we've reviewed recent budget setting reports. We haven't identified any significant weaknesses at the moment, although one area which will focus on our work is the decision the council made not to increase council tax in 21-22, which is clearly a decision at the council's disposal. But we'll be looking at the impact of that on medium-term financial planning going forward, because clearly that has financial implications for the council, not just in this year, but in sort of future years. So we'll be looking at how the council has responded to that as part of our value for money work. So moving on from there to the fees for audit. At the moment, we've highlighted in our report that the increased, what we anticipate being the increased fee for 2021, which follows on from our reporting in the annual audit letter for 1920, where we identified fee variations, some of which we envisaged would be recurring fee increases. So we've reflected in the 2021 proposed fee those recurring fee increases. But it's important to point out that at this stage, PSAA, public sector audit appointments that have to approve any fee increases, are still considering the increases we proposed in relation to 1920. So clearly, their decision on that will influence whether those fee increases that we've reflected in the plan are acceptable for 2021. So just there's that caveat on our fees. It's also important to mention that there are some views that the value for money conclusion work is more extensive and will require additional work, requiring an additional fee. We haven't reflected anything in the plan yet on that because of what I mentioned earlier about the scope and the guidance still not being entirely clear. So we'll update officers and members on that as we go through the 2021 audit to see whether there is an additional fee variation in relation to that or not. The other fees that we've highlighted there are the fees that we carry out on audit-related assurance work. So we do work on your housing benefits subsidy claim and also your teacher's pension return, and the fees for that work's also reflected on that page of the audit strategy memorandum. There are sorry, just lost my page here. I'm trying to save the planet by not printing everything out. Just moving through the letter. There's just two further things that I wanted to mention in relation to the audit strategy memorandum. The first is independence. Independence is precious to us as auditors. It's really important that we are independent and that we can act objectively and that we can report to you without fear or favour. And we review independence on an ongoing basis. We haven't identified any threats to our independence, and we are sort of clear that we can act objectively, independently and with integrity, and there are no threats to our independence, and it's important that we make that clear. And we continue to make that during the audit. And the final thing I wanted to highlight was that on pages 26 and 27 of the audit strategy memorandum, we set out our approach to materiality. So there's a detailed explanation of that there, but the point I would want to make to you here in the presentation is just that when we give our opinion on the financial statements, we're not given an opinion of absolute assurance that everything in those statements is correct, because that would be sort of a very expensive one, that would require sort of a very large amount of work. We work to materiality levels, which is a sort of a professional approach, and we've set out materiality levels in that appendix. And our approach that we do look at levels, so values, but we also look at the nature of the items of account. So it isn't simply that we only consider things below a particular, above a particular value. We also look at the nature of the items and the risk related to them. So that's what I wanted to highlight in the presentation, but I'm quite happy to take any questions from members or listen to any comments or observations that members might have. So thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Gavin. Very comprehensive report. I was looking at the number 8, materiality misstatements. Mm-hmm. Overall materiality, 5,924, down to £6 on members' allowances.
Sorry,
is that
Chair,
right?
And just clarify that those figures are in thousands, so that's actually 5.924 million, not 5,924. And the specific materiality that you mentioned there in relation to members' allowances, that's £6,000. It's just in the sort of header there, you'll see it says initial threshold in thousands. So those figures are much higher than the ones that you.
And also my question about COVID. I mean, the two reports, Gavin, 4.1 and 4.2. What's affected with the council with the heavy workload and information from COVID? You mentioned a comment on that.
In relation to COVID, we haven't identified any sort of specific significant risks in relation to COVID in our plan for the 2021 audit. But as you'll be aware, 2021 is the financial year that has been, seriously impacted by COVID for the council. So as part of our value for money work, we'll be looking at how the council responded to the pandemic. We haven't got any sort of negative observations on that at the moment because we have sort of tracked what the council's response. We haven't identified any significant weaknesses, but that will be a focus of our work on the value for money conclusion. In relation to the financial statements, although we haven't identified it as a significant risk, we are aware that the council has received significant funds from government, which it's in turn then allocated to, there's a range of different streams, isn't there, that have gone to support the community and local business. So we will be testing the arrangements on that and the financial transactions in relation to that, but we haven't specifically at this stage identified that as a significant risk area, although we will take it into account in our work.
Thanks very much. So moving on to 4.2, Gavin, audit progress report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So our audit progress report, the summary page at the front there on audit progress, or the couple of pages, really highlights things that we've already reported to you. So we've already, the 1920 audit is now concluded completely. You had the annual audit letter presented at your last meeting, and the 2021 we've completed the initial planning, which was the previous item we've just gone through on the audit strategy memorandum. The rest of the report, and it's got more information in there on the value for money conclusion, which I've already taken you through. The rest of the report highlights. I suppose it is worth just pausing for a moment to say that we have completed the work on the 2019-20 teachers' pensions return and the housing benefit subsidy claim. We've reported on both of those, so that work's completed. There are no significant issues arising, but we've included a summary of that on in the audit progress report on page 9. But the rest of it is a number of national publications which may be of interest to members on sort of issues. The only ones I'd like to sort of mention briefly are the Redmond review, which is highlighted on page 13 of this report. That's a really important report for us in local audit. There are sort of financial reporting issues highlighted in the Redmond review as well. But one of the key things coming out of that review, which was sort of focused to some degree on the local audit arrangements, which are the arrangements that we're part of for providing your audit. Redmond's conclusion of the fragile nature of the local audit market, and there are a number of reasons for that. We particularly always point to audit fees being very low, and actually Redmond went as far as to say that his view audit fees were 25% less than they needed to be given the sort of work requirement that's required of local auditors. So that has contributed to sort of difficulties in the audit market. The government's responded to that, and there's reference to that on page 13 as well. And one of the responses is to change the timetable, which I mentioned in my previous sort of presentation on the plan, how the timetable has changed. The other thing that draw your attention, not shying away from sort of what are difficult messages for us, but the other one that I would want to highlight is on page 15 and 16 of that report. We've referenced the Financial Reporting Council's review of local audit work. So when you sort of wonder who audits the auditors, the Financial Reporting Council's audit review unit audits us and the work that we do, and FRC is charged with having responsibility for sort of driving improvements in audit quality from audit firms. And their report, which came out in October 2020, highlighted for us and all the firms in this this sort of local audit marketplace the need for improvements in audit quality. So these were reviews of not the audit that's just been completed, but the previous one. And FRC, the Financial Reporting Council, look at large audits. You're not quite in that category. You're in the sort of category slightly below the really large audits, which is covered by quality reviews by a sort of different function. That's the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. They review audits at this level, but we take into account the findings from all of our regulators in the work that we carry out. So we responded seriously to the issues they'd raised in relation to their 18-19 reviews, which were of two, in our case, Mazar's case, were of two very large audits. And we responded to that in the work that we carried out in 1920. And the areas where the regulator was particularly trying to drive improvement are things like property, plant and equipment valuations, pension valuations, and other areas. That is one of the reasons why there was an increased audit fee in 1920, because of the measures we took to respond to the regulator and the issues that they'd raised with us, which is why we talked throughout last year about pressure on audit fees in response to regulatory pressures on us to do more work. So that item kind of explains some of the issues that led to your increased audit fees, which is the reason that I highlighted, although the findings were actually slightly uncomfortable for us as auditors, because they identified the need for auditors to improve the work. But we recognise that the role of the regulator is to drive improvement in audit quality. It's been driven, I think, by some of the high-profile corporate failures, but we recognise the need that we need to respond to it as well, and we have done. So that was all I wanted to say in relation to our audit progress report, but as always, happy to answer any questions or listen to any comments that members might have.
Thanks, Kevin. Just one comment, not about Mazars, but another firm. In the financial papers, Deloitte was attacked by the authorities from Looker's company, car dealers. So eye-watering sums, about 25 million and 21 million. So maybe don't comment on that, but it's I know there's a lot of big firms that have had fingers burnt.
Yes, Chair, you're right. I can't comment on that. I mean, I've seen the news coverage recently, as you indeed have done, but I can't comment on that. But clearly, audit regulation is a sort of important topic in our sector, and the regulator is clearly proactive in relation to that, because there's that case that's been considered, and there are a number of others on an ongoing basis that are highlighted in the press.
Yeah, just one paragraph in one of the papers said a black hole in the account was 21.8 million. So I've mentioned that. Thanks very much, Gavin, on the attendance and your presentations. Very, very good, comprehensive. And is there a new partner next year or the following year with Mazars?
Not that I'm aware of.
I thought you were changing from auditors in the firm.
No, my expectation, I'll continue as the engagement lead on this audit. I did mention in the previous presentation that the audit manager's changed, and that's going to be Ross going forward rather than Kath. But unless your party does some knowledge that I don't have, I'm expecting to continue as your engagement lead for a few more years.
Thanks very much. Because you're very welcome on the Audit and Governance Committee. So
thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and good luck. Right, we move on to Noel with internal audit plan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
22.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the direction of internal audit activity and to seek approval of the annual operation and internal audit plan for 21-22. Given the role and responsibility of the committee chair, it's important that members are satisfied internal audit coverage provides the assurance that you need. In order to develop the plan, what we do, we risk assess all auditable areas, as I've outlined in paragraph 2.3 of the report. We also analyse the council's risk registers and corporate plan. I meet with each assistant director across the authority to discuss coverage in their areas of responsibility. And then what I do is agree that preliminary plan with Chris Little. Obviously, he's the council's chief finance officer. The plan is then taken to corporate management team for their agreement. So as members can see, we go through quite a rigorous process to make sure the plan's comprehensive, and it allows us to give the committee the best level of assurance that we can, given the resources that we have available. The last stage of the process, Chair, is for members of the committee to review the plan. It's really important for us that this happens because members bring their own experience and perspective to things. And in the past, members have requested that we cover particular areas, and if we can include them in the plan, obviously we will. What I've done, Chair, just for members' information, is include the Better Governance Forum guidance on approving audit plans for members' information, and the recommendation of the report is that members review and approve the 21-22 internal audit plan, and note that the internal audit budget for 21-22 is £230,000.
Thanks, Noel. Any comments or questions? No? Okay, so move on to 4.4, internal audit plan 20-21 update.
Yeah,
Noel.
thanks, Chair. Again, the purpose of this report is to inform members of the progress that we've made to date, completing the internal audit plan for 2021. I'm sure the report's in its normal format, Chair. I'm sure members recognise the format. Table 1 outlines the recommendations that we've made at the school audits that we've completed, and all the recommendations that we've agreed. Table 2 in the report, that details the level of assurance that we've been able to place on the audits here at the council, and I'm pleased to report all those are satisfactory. Appendix E of the report, that goes into more detail about the risks that we identified in those individual audits, and the actions that we agreed to mitigate that risk. To be honest, Chair, there's not a lot else I would draw members' attention to. As I say, the audits that we've completed are satisfactory, and that's pleasing to be able to report to the committee. And the recommendation of the report is that members note the contents therein.
Okay, any questions? Just a comment or question, Noel, on the table 2 on COVID and test and trace support payment scheme. What's that?
That was the test and trace. Yeah, that was where if it's quite complicated, Chair, because we have that many different grants and that many different schemes. But this one was where individuals, if they went through the test and trace, were eligible for support. We did a really comprehensive review in that particular area, and we found no issues. So this, if members recall, we came back to the committee at the back end of last year, and we changed the audit plan to include areas around COVID. And this, I think, fits in with the question you were asking, Gavin, in terms of our external auditors' input to COVID. So we've started that process, and we're now working through all these grants. And this is the first one that we've completed. So these were the payments that individuals were entitled to around isolation. So and basically, Chair, I would sort of like to put on record that the good work that's being done down in the benefits section, because they took this on and they managed this, and they've done a really good job in doing that. So we reviewed the payments that were made, and we found no issues. Everything was recorded, everything was documented, it was transparent. And what members of the committee will find is this will be the first of a number of COVID audits that we report to yourselves around the various different grants that Gavin alluded to in his previous presentation. So yeah, I think that's good news. I think it reflects well on the council in terms of how they were able to take this extra sort of work, if you like, on board and do it in a very efficient and effective way.
Thanks very much, Noel, and thanks very much indeed. So keep up the work.
Okay, thanks,
Good
Chair.
work. Thanks very much, Noel. Right, so we move on to number 5 items, statutory items, 6.2, quality accounts 2021, North Tees and Hartlepool NHS Foundation Trust. Over to
Keith. Hello, thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. Right, I'll just share the presentation. Hopefully this works. Can you let me know when you see the presentation?
Sir Keith.
It is, yes.
Is the presentation up?
Not yet, Keith.
Not yet. Yeah. She's saying it's shared. You may have to do it your side, I think, if you're okay.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Bear with me 1 second. Oh, hang on. There you go. Yes, it is up now.
Was it? Oh, I've just taken it down.
Just a little bit of lag.
Right, okay. Just let me know when it's back up again and I'll...
No, doesn't seem to have come back up again. Right, I will share it from my side now, Keith.
Okay, I'll just ask you to change the slides then. Okay, thank you.
No problem. So just bear with me 1 second. Can everybody see that?
It's up now, yeah.
Yeah, I'll start that off.
Just put it on full screen, that'd be good. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, councillors. Thank you for inviting us back again to present our quality accounts presentation. I attend this every year to do our feedback to yourselves, so thank you very much. Karen Sheard can't be here today, but we do have Leslie Wharton and Chris Tulloch on the call, on the meeting as well. So Leslie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, my name's Leslie Wharton. I am the Assistant Director of Nursing and Infection Control.
And Chris Tulloch as well.
Chris Tulloch, I'm Deputy Medical Director and Orthopaedic Surgeon.
So Chris and Leslie will be able to possibly take any additional questions that you may have for the presentation. If you want to ask as we go along, that's fine, or if you want to save all your questions up to the end, that is totally up to the committee.
If you present the report and then we can ask questions at the end of the presentation.
No problem. I'll start. So our 3 priorities are always underneath the heading of patient safety, effectiveness of care and patient experience. Next slide, please. And underneath the headers of patient experience, we have mortality, dementia, mental health, safeguarding both adults and children's infections, effectiveness of care, we have learning from deaths, discharge processes, accessibility, violent incidents, and the safety and quality dashboard. And under patient experience, we've got palliative care and care for the dying patients, our surveys, and the friends and family tests. So this presentation will go through just a couple of those elements. So if we go to the next 2 slides, please. So underneath patient safety, we've got mortality. So every year we have this discussion about mortality. So we have the 2 national indicators of HSMR and SHMI. So HSMR is Hospital Standardised Mortality Ratio, which just basically looks at 56 diagnosis groups for in-hospital mortalities only. So when I pulled this presentation together, the latest 12-month time period was December 2019 to November 20, and that was 97.12. The national mean is 100, so ideally you want to be around the 100 mark, be it slightly above, slightly below. And in the quality accounts last year when we presented in 2019-20, it was 91.3, and that was for the time period December 18 to November 19, which is an increase of 6.82 points. For SHMI, Summary Level Hospital Mortality Indicator, we have 220 some diagnosis groups in there, and it's for in-hospital deaths and those patients who die within up to 30 days post-discharge. So the latest time period when I pulled the report together was 99.94 for October 2019 to September 2020. Again, you want to be around about the 100 mark. The 100 value kind of represents the same number of people died that is expected to die based on calculations. So ours was 99.94. In the quality accounts last year, it was 97.60. So you can see from both national indicators, they've gone up slightly. Next slide, please. Come through. So this is just showing where we are as an organisation. So on the left-hand side, you've got our trust indicated, and all the other dots on the funnel plot are other trusts in the country. So you can see where we sit, which is near enough in the middle of the funnel plot where you want to be as an organisation. On the right-hand side, it's just a breakdown of all the North East trusts and see where they sit as well for that time period. Next slide, please. The next slide just represents our 12-month rolling values all the way back to April 14, March 15, when it was at its highest point of 127 point something. And as you can see then, it's got a nice downward trend. And all the way from February 18, January 19, it's been below the 100 mark, which has been very good. But it has started to tail back up again. But we are starting to see more of the COVID information to feed through. On the next slide, please. It's just the same information, but for SHMI. So on the left-hand side, where our trust is, based where all the other trusts in the country are, and on the right-hand side, where we are for SHMI, based on Northeast region. So you can see those trusts. The breakdown of the two metrics, HSMI and SHMI, look at the same data set, but apply different methodologies to them. So you can be outside of one of the values for within the funnel plot, but you can be inside for the other one. It's just the way that each of the metrics have been calculated. But you can see what we say around the 100 mark for either one. And then next slide, please. And then this again just shows our 12-month rolling values back from April 12, March 13. Our peak again was around about April 14, March 15, just a little bit after that. And then since then, it's been a nice downward trend, consistently been underneath the 100 line. From February 18 to January 19, again just tailing back up again, as expected with the pandemic coming on. Next slide, please. And this is just to show our trust row mortality from April to January for each year. So these figures are cumulative in the top table. So you can see how since April onwards, 2020, 2021, what our cumulative position has been like. So at the end of January, we were 1,349 mortalities. Previous year, 1,251, 1,209, 1,312. So we've had more mortalities this year than previous years. And the chart at the bottom just shows our monthly number of mortalities. So you can see in August, in October, then all of a sudden the big spike, November, December, and January's data as well there. So you can see that the latest spike, which does include the COVID patient decease, has really been higher than any of the previous months since April 16. And the point of December 17, January 18, that higher peak was when we had the quite a bad winter period. So it's even higher than that one. So moving on to dementia. Next slide, please. So this slide just represents, once it loads through, can't see it, the information of patients admitted to the trust. That slide moved on. There we go, thank you. Admitted to the trust with a diagnosis of dementia and delirium. Started collecting information or reporting information in 2013. And every year there was an increase up until 1920. where there's a slight decrease, and then 2021 is quite dramatically down, but that is based on our activity has been vastly reduced for inpatients due to the COVID pandemic. So we can't really do a like-for-like comparison, but we are still having patients coming through with a diagnosis of dementia and delirium. So unfortunately, we can't do a like-for-like comparison on previous years, as is next year, comparing it to a COVID year. So it'll be a bit on the non-comparable side for the next couple of years. Next slide, please. Infection control. So these 2019-20 was the first year that the CDFCO methodology was split into two sections, into HOHA, which is hospital onset healthcare associated, and COHA, which is community onset healthcare associated. So we do have a benchmark position for this financial year of 2020-21. So at the end of January, we were 28 cases compared to 33, and 9 cases compared to 16 for infections for C. diff. Next slide, please. And then the other reported infections that we do have is for MRSA at the point of January, we had 0 against 0. MSSA was 22s. E. coli were down by 20, was 22 cases. Klebsiella was 6, down by 3. And Pseudomonas was the same at 3 cases each. Next slide, please. And the next slide is just regarding the COVID-19 infections. So I thought it was pertinent to put in for this presentation as well. And it's a section within the quality accounts. So the top left chart is the number of positive patients in hospital. So you can see wave 1, where the peak was 73, and then it tailed off over the summer months and started climbing back up again. Lockdown period of 2, which was the 31st of October to 16th December, started climbing again, and then lockdown 3. Our peak was on the 11th of January 2021, where we had 216 patients within the trust that had a COVID-19 diagnosis, so 3 times as many as in the first lockdown period. When I pulled this slide together on the 2nd of March, we were down to 55 patients in the organisation who had a COVID diagnosis, and that has come down steadily as well, back down to where it has stabilised. Like in the previous presentations that have been done for a little while now, we're around the 30 cases mark, so it's staying around about 30 at the moment. But that shows the intensity that the trust was under throughout those periods. Next slide, please. And again, this is just the COVID-19 deaths that occurred. So you can see the first period, April, had the highest month of 71 deaths associated with COVID, tailed off in the summer months and started peaking again. So the November, December, January months kind of coincide with the increase within HSMR, and will do with Shimmy as well, because of the, well, especially in HSMR, just because of the vast number of deaths that we've had with COVID diagnoses on there as well. So January 21, we had 130 mortalities associated with COVID deaths, and then that has tailed off quite significantly to 38 in February. And then the chart on the right hand side just demonstrates that there was 528 deaths on other wards and 45 deaths within ITU, and there was just the monthly values. Next slide, please. So in agreement with last year's discussions with stakeholders, we put violent incidents into this year's presentation. Just let the slide change over. Wasn't on mine. So we're just comparing 1920 to 2020-21. And there has been a change in our processes for 2020-2021. So we now have the security team and other areas like that submitting their incidences within our data system. So that's why there's a non-comparable kind of benchmark against 1920. Where it says 237 against 376. So even though there's a visual increase, it's just that there's a change of processes, should I say. So if those processes had been in place the previous year, you may have seen a comparable number. So the big difference, the big jump between the 2 years isn't that there might be more incidents occurring, it's just that the process has changed within there. But the number of types of instances by category: verbal abuse 132, disruptive aggressive behaviour 93, physical abuse 70. That was unintentional. Malicious is 28. So you can see that on the chart, the actual number of incidents that we do have per month. On to the next slide, please. Skip to one more, please. Thank you. Moving on to friends and family. Again, this has been greatly affected by the activity within the trust has been down so much due to COVID-19. But we do still have friends and family tests by text and by paper. On this slide, you can see the word cloud on the left, and then also the responses in the middle bit. So 12,176 for the year, and split down by the categories of response. So out of those 12,176, 92.04% rated the organisation very good or good for the service of care that they provided, and 4.14%. So for the friends and family tests, we do get a weekly update regarding the text file. So it's more real-time information than we did get before when it was underneath paper. It took about a month to then process that information. So all ward areas were getting their information quite late on. Now, due to the text process, we can have the new file on a Monday, and that's out disseminated on the dashboards and BI platform to all ward areas for them to utilise that information in their meetings and discussions. Also, it's available to our patient experience team, who can then look at those comments and try and have discussions with the relevant ward areas or to put improvement plans in place. So it's a better process for the text ones. Next slide, please. And then on to complaints. To balance that off, we have the three categories of informal, formal meeting and formal response from April 20 to January 21. Again, informals down by 55, stage 2 down by 55, and stage 3 is formal complaints is down by 66. You could say that's probably expected due to the activity within the organisation, especially stage 2 formals, where people didn't want to actually come in to have a face-to-face meeting with members of the trust. But we did have a period when COVID was really at its peak where there was not that many complaints coming in. I think the public and patients were realising how much pressure the trust was under, so they held off sending in their complaints until they felt that, okay, now we do need to send that complaint in. So we did have a quiet period, but they did kind of just hold back their complaint, and then they did submit it. That wasn't at any request from the trust, it was just what seemed to have happened naturally throughout all the public complaints. And then the next slide, please. And this is just a breakdown of the top 10 complaints by type, by month. Communication, verbal, non-verbal, always seems to be the top every single year. No matter what plans you try and put in place and try and do it, it's always down to communication. There's treatment, procedure, attitude of staff, care, compassion, later life, diagnosis. And you can see there on the chart the other ones. Every day, the complaints information is updated onto our BI platform, where each ward matron, senior team can actually see complaints by type, by category, as well as the subject and the description of the complaint as well. So those were looked at more intensely than ever before to try and get a handle of why people are complaining and what we can do to try and mitigate against future complaints. But communication is always seems to be at the top on that list, unfortunately. Next slide, please. And again, this is our engagement sessions that we do every year. Tend to have a draft quality accounts document done for March, April time. We have been given adjusted timelines by NHS Choices. So the 30th of June deadline, which we normally all have to meet, has been pushed back, but I'm still working towards getting all our stakeholder engagement meetings done and a draft document produced, which I will then send out to all our stakeholders to review as well. But we are still working as we normally do, but I'm still working towards that 30th of June deadline if we can do, but the official deadline has been pushed back. They haven't told us when it's been pushed back to yet, but I'm still doing it as we normally have done in the previous years. That is the end of the presentation, so I'm more than happy to take any questions, or if there's any questions for Leslie or Chris as well, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Keith. Any comments or questions? To know? All right. thing.
I was just going to say, if there's any questions that come to mind, you can send me an email afterwards with a few questions on that we can quite easily draft a response. So if Joan wants to pull something together, if it needs to be, if nobody wants to ask a question now, they're more than happy to do that.
Yeah, that's great. We've got recommendations to formulate views and comments to inform the committee's third-party declaration. We can do that, as you say, with emails or contacted with the trust at the moment.
Okay.
Joan?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So in terms of moving progress with this, if we can indicate from this meeting today that members were supportive of the priorities that are identified, and that if we could delegate to yourself and me to feed in any issues, comments that need to be included or referred on to the Trust for inclusion in their quality accounts. If we could get approval for that, Chair.
Yep, so thank you very much for the presentation. So we move on to 6.3, Assistant Reproduction Unit Update. We've got a presentation each year about the RU. Is Rachel?
I am here. I will share my screen.
Louise?
And your presentation is showing.
We've got it now. Yeah.
Councillors, just this is Stephen Pett. I'm a care.
Me to introduce this. I'm not sure whether we can hear Steve. You've gone on to mute.
Mute, I think.
Mute. Off.
There you go, Steve.
Hello, councillors. My name's Steve Pett. I'm a care group.
You've gone on to mute again, Steve.
Rachel, shall I introduce us all and we can go from there, and then if Steve's got something to add we can do it afterwards if that's useful.
That might be best.
That would be helpful.
I'm Katie McLeod. I'm here from Tees Valley CCG and I'm here with colleagues Rachel Scott and Steve Pett from North Tees Trust. We've come to give you an update on the assisted reproduction unit, and we've got a few slides to go through and then happy to take any questions at the end if that's okay. Do you want to go on to the first slide, Rachel, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So hopefully, as most of you are already aware, we've had discussions over the past few years regarding the unit, and we last attended this meeting in 2017. Unfortunately, at the time, due to workforce implications, there were some concerns regarding the sustainability of the service, and a range of actions or initiatives were discussed with the group as to how to support the future of the service. And this included a range of conversations around discussions with other organisations to support delivery of services locally, what those pathways might look like as a result of those conversations, and really importantly, how all of that information was then communicated to patients. Can we get the next slide, please, Rachel? Thank you. Hopefully, after the presentation slides that we're going to go through, you'll agree that a significant amount of work has been undertaken since we last attended, and our aim today is really to go through some of that detail with you and give you a chance to be updated on where the service is right now and offer the opportunity to ask any questions. I'd just like to highlight a couple of key themes that we'd like to talk about, and then we'll go into the detail afterwards. I've gone on mute now. Must be something going on today. Can you hear me okay?
You can, Katie.
So the last time we came, we spoke about the conversations that we were having with other organisations and other providers to support delivery of services locally. North Tees have worked really hard on this, and we've worked in collaboration with other local providers across the Tees Valley. We've now managed to secure some collaborative support with South Tees Trust and Darlington to try and retain services as locally as possible. There's more detail in the slides, but just to highlight at this stage that we've managed to retain the tanks on the Hartlepool site, and I know that was discussed in a lot of detail the last time that we presented. With the Trust have purchased a new equipment, which has been supported by HEFA, the regulatory body, and that's ensured that there's been no movement of those tanks or whatever stored in those tanks outside of the Hartlepool area, obviously except at the request of individual patients to support their own individual pathways. The Trust have regularly communicated with patients to keep them informed, and that's been in line with the regulator's requirements. I'll get my words out. So hopefully the detail that we'll go through will give you some assurances around the processes that we've put in place to support delivery as locally as possible in Hartlepool and across the Tees Valley. I'm going to hand over to Rachel from North Tees, who will go through some more detail around what the service looks like right now and what plans we've got in place next. And we're happy to take any questions at the end.
Thank you, Katie. So just to reiterate some of the points that Katie's maybe mentioned and provide a bit more detail, North Tees and Hartlepool Trust hold 2 HEFA licences. One is to actually carry out fertility investigations at the unit in Hartlepool. The other licence is in regards to the cryopreservation tanks and making sure that all of the regulations that are around that storage are in place and are audited, etc. So the tanks are based at Hartlepool and will remain there. We have secured their future at Hartlepool. There are 3 tanks which we have updated within the last year, so we've actually replaced them because they were coming to the end of their life, if you will. So we've replaced those with brand new tanks in line with HEFA. One of the major issues has been around the staffing cover for our embryologist. We have been able to secure some support for that from South Tees. So we have to cover and have an embryologist available for 24/7 for the tanks. We have the embryologist that does work at Hartlepool, but the collaboration with South Tees does mean that we also have further cover, say if our embryologist is on leave or unavailable for whatever reason. We obviously, as mentioned, have started to work closely with South Tees, and I will just explain a bit more about the actual service to you. So this slide just shows the way things have been working for the past few years at the assisted reproduction unit in Hartlepool. So patients have been referred in from their GP, where they've then gone through various investigations around their fertility. Once the investigations have been concluded and the results given, the patient is then able to go away, digest that information, and decide where they would like to be referred onto in terms of actually having any fertility treatment, such as IVF, IUI, etc. The pathway going forward and with the collaboration with South Tees will actually mean patients will be referred into the assisted reproduction unit. They will then have their fertility investigations in Hartlepool, and then they will be referred on to South Tees, but it won't be as it currently is, where there would then be a wait. They would be put straight through to South Tees. This will enable shorter timescales for treatment for them. Also, a kind of continuity of care, which means that they don't have to keep repeating their history and all of the issues and the investigations they've faced to different people at different times. All of that information will be available. So the consultant they will see at South Tees will be up to speed with where they are at in their journey and their history. They will then have their treatment at South Tees, and then we will be looking at various ways of how to actually streamline the processes across North Tees and South Tees, and also looks so that the majority of treatment will happen at Hartlepool, and then it would be a case of they would just go to South Tees for the actual implantation, if you were, and the treatment. But then hopefully we'll be looking at follow-ups happening at Hartlepool as well going forward. So just to give you an overview, obviously as it has been a bit of time, I think, since this was last discussed, but at the moment, obviously the service provided at Hartlepool, we do consultation. We then do, like I say, the fertility investigations, which can involve pelvic scans, semen analysis, blood tests, etc. As mentioned, we have the cryopreservation tanks, and as Katie said, everything in those tanks is secure and is only transferred out at the request of the patient when they are ready. We have 2 consultants that have special interest in fertility issues involved in the service, 2 qualified staff nurses, one of whom is also the quality manager for the unit to ensure everything works as it should and is audited. We have 1 embryologist, 1 healthcare assistant who supports the embryologist as well. So we have a kind of double cover in terms of the tanks. The HCA is on call as well, so we do have a robust process there. We also have an admin assistant as well.
I just want to ask a question about the staff.
Yes.
Is that Hartlepool or across the trust?
This is just North Tees and Hartlepool Foundation Trust staff. And at the moment, in terms of the kind of collaboration that we will have with South Tees, the staff will remain employees of North Tees, and South Tees employees will remain in the employment of South Tees. What we might just look to do is have some flexibility in terms of cover to make sure that we have robust processes in place due to staffing, leaving or annual leave, etc. But as in terms of the collaboration that we've agreed, everyone will stay where they are and carry on with the activities that they do at the moment, and we will then look towards reviewing pathways and things once we've started that collaboration.
Okay, thank you.
So just to give a bit of an overview of the system or the service that we've provided so far, we do have very good family and friends feedback. So all of the responses for 2020 and 2021 have actually been 100% good or very good, which is fantastic, especially considering the type of news that people do actually get from the service. We've had lots of lovely comments from patients as well, which is very heartwarming, I have to say, having read some of those comments myself. But everyone is very supportive and feel that the staff do give a very good service in terms of supporting patients through, like I say, quite a difficult journey. Just moving on, so obviously there has been some delay in progress in terms of COVID, but we have picked up since kind of Christmas working with South Tees very closely. Obviously the collaboration is between North Tees and South Tees, and it's fully supported by the CCG. We are looking to actually implement the kind of shared management approach kind of for a date from the 1st of April. But as mentioned, we are starting to have those links in regularly anyway, and starting to get the staff introduced to each other to enable that collaboration to start. One of the first things we will do is look at a name for the possible service, and we'll potentially look to get staff and patients involved in actually choosing that name, but that will be to reflect the fact that it will be a Tees Valley service. We will then, once we have settled into that kind of shared management, we will start to look at the clinical pathways and look to streamline and align those for the better choice for the patient. So the idea is that we want to make things as simple and as easy for the patients as possible, and to give them the best possible care that we can across the Tees Valley. So just, I think, again, probably the key points. The collaboration will ensure the long-term resilience and assurance of the staffing cover, specifically in relation to the embryologist, but we'll also look for all of the staff as well. Hopefully it will be a lot more streamlined. Like I say, there will be reduced time scales, continuity of care, so that everyone is up to speed, and again, don't have to keep mentioning the history to everyone. The retained local services will mean that there are career opportunities for patients, career opportunities for the people of Middlesbrough, Redcar, Hartlepool, Stockton as well. It is in line with also the managed clinical networks that are currently in place across the region as well. And obviously it will hopefully give us the opportunity to get more involved with some research and development opportunities as well. Okay, Steve, did you want to add anything? Or are we ready to take questions?
No, nothing to add, councillors. Sorry for my technical difficulties earlier on. Happy to take any questions.
Mrs. Harrison?
Okay, thanks very much. Brenda?
Thanks, Chair. I think that, are we going to look at the screen or are we going to get back to looking at each other? Because I can't see many people.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. It's just I prefer to see people's faces. I think this is really good news, and I think that there's a lot that we can be thankful for to all those people who have campaigned over the years to ensure that a lot of this service remains in Hartlepool. And I'm thinking particularly of the mothers that were involved in this process and who bravely stood out going through their circumstances and really, you know, put the case forward for having a lot of the treatments in Hartlepool. I think as well, if I remember rightly, Rachel, I may be wrong, but it's a few years ago now. But I think at one point we were looking at having some service in Hartlepool and then patients going to Newcastle. So it's really good news that they don't have to go as far as Newcastle and they can go to South Tees, and that the majority of the treatment is going to take place in Hartlepool. So it's good news, and I hope those mothers who campaigned really feel that it was worth what they did. And thank you for the report and for the good news. I know that, you know, I said before, it may have been 3 years ago, but I remember saying that, you know, we had a unit in Hartlepool that had been set up by a doctor here, and it was working very well, and to just have it taken away was cruel. And I think that I know a lot of people, and there were a lot of discussions around it. So I think that we are certainly in a better place than we would have been. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions. How many embryos in Hartlepool are stored now?
I'll take that one, Councillor Hall. In terms of precise numbers, I'm not entirely sure we should spare the precise numbers, but it's less than 100 embryos, and there are other samples there as well, Councillor Hall, as well.
Okay, thanks very much. And also there was an issue 3 years ago about approaching 2 private companies on cryo tanks. What's happening with those?
Well, we've got a solution now in that we've replaced our own tanks, Councillor Hall, so we don't need to do that now. We've got a much better solution in that we've replaced our own tanks in Hartlepool, and they will stay in Hartlepool. That's part of the arrangement we have with South Tees, and we've now obviously got the resilience in the embryology cover to be sure that we can manage those over a 24-hour period. So that issue's resolved.
Good. Looking up, I think. So thanks very much indeed. Any other comments? No. Thanks very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we move on to 6.4. Midwife-led birthing unit at University Hospital of Hartlepool. That will be Louise. Or not? Who's presenting the report?
Hi there, yes, Louise Johnson, I'm
Hello,
Care Group
Louise.
Director. Hi, Care Group Director at North Tees and Hartlepool NHS Foundation Trust for Healthy Lives, of which Women's and Children's Services sit in there, and my colleague Steph will introduce herself.
Yes, hi, I'm Stephanie L. Mallock, I'm the Head of Midwifery for North Tees and Hartlepool. Good morning to you all.
Thank you.
So we've got a presentation. Are you sharing the presentation or?
Happy to share it if
I can
prefer us to. If you want to have a go at your end first, and then we'll.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you see that? Got the present. Can you see that now?
Not just yet, Louise. No, it hasn't come through yet, Louise.
Sorry, it looks.
Here we go.
There now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so Steph's going to start us.
Yeah, so good morning to everybody, and thank you for inviting us this morning to just update you on the midwifery-led unit at Hartlepool. It's a little while since we came to give you an update, so hopefully today this will be good news. So if we can just move on to the next slide, please. Just want to set the scene a little bit here on the national maternity ambition for maternity services across the country. So the government really have set an ambition for all maternity services across the UK to reduce the rates of stillbirths and neonatal deaths and brain injuries in infants by 50% by 2025. We also want to reduce preterm births from 8% to 6%, and this is really to improve the outcomes for mothers and families across the UK. Can we just move on to the next one, please? Thank you. So the vision for maternity services and midwifery-led care across the United Kingdom really has been set by the Better Births document, which was produced in 2016. And really the national ambition is that the vision for maternity services across England is for them to become very safe, more personalised and kinder and professional and more family friendly. And this is where the continuity of care really sort of kicks in, that women have this continuity to achieve the outcomes of a fantastic birth experience and a healthy mother and a healthy baby. Every woman needs to have access to information to enable her to make decisions and choice about her care, and where her and her baby can access the support that is centred around that mother's and that family's individual needs and circumstances. It needs staff to be supported in delivering that care, and which the woman is centred to it. And our teams need to be working in they need to be high-performing teams in organisations where they're well-trained and working together to achieve these better outcomes for women. They need to be well led, and it needs to be a good culture within these maternity teams that are providing this care for women and families. And thus that will promote innovation and continuous learning within our teams to provide these really good outcomes for women, and thus a really good birth experience for both women and families, and obviously good outcomes for our babies and the future health of the future health of women and children. Can we just move on to the next one, please? Thank you. And really what's driving this, could we just move on to the next one? If it'll move. Oh yeah, sorry, these are the symbols of continuity of care here that are just coming up on this presentation. So we have the safe care, we have the personalised care around the woman, the continuity, which is the continuity of the team. That can be their midwives and consultants, so a woman knows her care provider. It's also encouraging better postnatal and perinatal mental health care and care across the board, really, and multi-professional working teams. And that's not just within our organisation, that's across our localities. So that's both with County Durham and Darlington and South Cleveland as well. So it's within our local regions, and a payment system that really would enable, this is part of the Better Birth document, but that would enable women to access their care in a unit of choice if they so wish to. So if we just move on to the next one, please. So driving this transformation, clearly there's some challenges around driving transformation and choice for women, but the main aim really is that we provide a safe maternity care and where that woman has choice and it's personalised to her. And our challenges, as we know, really is that care has become the complexity of our women across our region, and that can be because of obesity, smoking, and the deprivation that we see in our localities in the Tees Valley. maternal mental health, we know that's on an increase, and that's mental health issues that women bring with a pregnancy or they develop during their pregnancy or postnatally. And we know that we sit in the Tees Valley, we know that our demographics, we have significant public health and vulnerability issues. So really the objective of us driving this transformation to provide better outcomes for our women and our babies and families is to deliver the better outcomes and reduce these health inequalities. So as a Tees Valley, we really want to improve these outcomes for our mums, and that is really to develop our services. So we have we reduce the health inequalities, we improve our staffing and recruitment and retention, and we improve the service and hopefully improve our outcomes moving on. And really key to this is on the next slide, is making every making every contact count. Sorry, getting my tongue twisted there. And this is key to improving quality and outcomes for our mothers and birthing in a midwifery-led unit as in Hartlepool. And it's linked with the Tees Valley vision and population health, and it delivers on the national maternity ambition, the long-term plan, the better birth agenda, and the transformation across the ICS. And that's in conjunction with our colleagues both at South Tees and in County Durham and Darlington. That is the vision, that we work together and we reduce the health inequalities within our population. By reducing the health inequalities across our population, will increase the amount of women that are able to birth within in a midwifery-led unit, such as at Hartlepool. And really, this really was the ambition that we had, and why we wanted to reintroduce birth at Hartlepool. And that was a request that Hartlepool Council also sort of put to us, that we wanted birth back in Hartlepool. And this is where we are now. With birth back in Hartlepool. So it absolutely covers the Better Births document and the long-term plan and the request from Hartlepool Council. We just press on to the next one. So it's not really just a ticky box exercise. Birthing in a midwifery-led unit provides lots of great outcomes, and it fits in with the Better Birth. So you can see the 6 outcomes there that will improve birth for mothers and the birth experience. So what we hope, having consistency of a midwife and a clinical team, as what we've introduced at the midwifery-led unit at Hartlepool, women and the babies throughout the 3 phases of their maternity journey, that's antenatally, in labour and postnatal, will be seen by the same midwife. This midwife will take on the full responsibility for coordinating that woman's care, and she will ensure that all the needs of that woman are met and of that of the baby. We also have a LinkedIn consultant there, so if any problems occur, we'll be able to discuss with it, and if there is a need to transfer that woman to North Tees, that will happen out of the low risk, or they will just advise. So there's the safety net in there of having a consultant linked with us, just for reassurance for the mother. This continuity model will provide outcomes of the whole 6 outcomes, which will be a better pregnancy journey. So what have we done? So I'll move on to Louise, and she will do what else we've done to develop our team at Hartlepool.
So a little bit about the birthing unit itself. So some pictures around some of the work that we've undertaken. So we've done quite a bit of estate work to make this a really aesthetically pleasing environment for women that are delivering the babies. So the Roan Suite is the name that we've utilised, and that's been in collaboration with our women to decide that. And you'll see some of the various elements, including the birthing pools and other areas that have been developed. Staff engagement and recruitment's actually been a key element of this, and some things that I know has been previously discussed in the council meetings. And this is around getting the right midwives with the right vision and the right ideas in terms of encouraging these women that are low risk to deliver in the unit, and also to ensure that we improve the health and well-being of women, so pre-conception and during conception, so that they become low risk and then can deliver in the maternity-led unit. And this is the team that are currently in place there. We're definitely recruited on that basis. The Rowan team, as we've said, this was generated through a number of ideas in terms of the appropriate name for the unit, and the Rowan tree symbolises the tree of life, and it was something that we engaged with women, and they felt that this was the appropriate name for the unit. Just in terms of a little bit about the demographics and the maternity caseload, so for the recommendations nationally, that midwives caseload should be between about 36 and 42 women at any one time, which equates per annum to the 216 to 252, and obviously that's the locality of Hartlepool that we're providing care for. This ensures that you provide personalised care, that you're improving outcomes, and that you're developing that relationship with the women as you go through their pregnancy journey through to delivery, which is the continuity of care agenda that Steph's discussed earlier. In terms of how we're collecting data and evaluating the service, this has changed actually since we prepared the presentation a number of weeks ago. We've now got 96 women booked onto the caseload for the Rowan unit. All appropriate low-risk women in Hartlepool are offered a place. So that's done through an online booking service, but we also then review all pregnancies to ensure that we've captured all low-risk women and they're offered the opportunity to birth in Hartlepool. Just to give the context in terms of low-risk women, currently that accounts for 11% of bookings in the Hartlepool locality. As a trust, low risk pregnancies equate to about 30%, but for Hartlepool it's 11%. So I think that gives the context in terms of the work that we want to do with women, not just in relation to the end outcome of delivering in the unit, but actually how we improve their health and well-being, which again Steph's talked about earlier. And the Rowan team bookings in total account for about 55% of the low risk women that have been identified, and that's for a variety of reasons. So potentially a woman may have been low risk at booking, but then for whatever reason needs to change to a consultant led service or into more of a medium to high risk bracket, or it may be choice. And then just in terms of some of the audit and evaluation, we're constantly reviewing the numbers of low-risk women that are eligible, and you've seen that from the increase, obviously, in the last couple of weeks in terms of the patients that are booked into this service. We do have a relatively high attrition rate for a number of reasons, miscarriage risk assessment, and the things I've alluded to earlier, but that we've got a collective priority with our partnership agencies and other teams to ensure that we continue this agenda in terms of making every contact count, so that we maximise the option to deliver in Hartlepool, which is all of our ambition. So we're constantly re-evaluating our service and our teams, and we're working with them to ensure that we're providing the best outcomes for women in Hartlepool area, which again is our ambition. We've got quantitative data that we're capturing on an ongoing basis and working very closely with our local maternity system, of which we're a key partner, ensuring that we are achieving the national priorities as Steph's discussed, and that we've got qualitative data as well in terms of the satisfaction of women and the family and how we are improving our services moving forward. Stop sharing. Okay. Hi, happy to take questions. Have I stopped sharing? Yes. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Brenda?
No. Sorry. Mute is doing its own thing.
Hello.
Thanks for that. I have to say this is really good news, and I will just say that you've described my experience in Hartlepool of births. My first baby was born in 1982. I had 3 children in Camerons. The last one was born because Camerons had been taken away. In the hospital, and it was a slightly different experience. And I think that's where things started going awry, when we actually lost that kind of community-friendly, more informal, if you like, approach to birthing. And so it's come right round in a circle, I'm glad to say, because at one time when we were looking at extremely few numbers and sometimes none, actually, babies being born in Hartlepool, it was worrying. And, you know, I think we all said this some years ago at the time when this was happening. So this is really good news, really positive. And just hopefully it will just keep building up, and the facilities look fantastic. I mean, obviously Cameron's didn't have those facilities at the time, but it didn't matter. The porridge was great. We got fed really well. You know, the important things when you're having a baby, it's important to feed people well. Yes. Yeah, so
there's some lovely facilities.
Yeah, it really looks good. And at the end of all this pandemic, I'd love to be able to go and actually have a look around if that was possible.
Oh, we would.
Because it looks really good.
We would love you
Thank you very much.
Around. Yeah, we'd love you to. Yeah.
So thank you for that.
We do actually. We have had a birth in the unit. We've had our first lady birth in the unit in February. Unfortunately, we can't publicise that yet because she wanted a little bit of time because obviously with the pandemic, her family haven't seen the baby. But I think she will allow us to publicise it, so that hopefully we'll be able to do a story for the Mail and that, so the women at Hartlepool will see that. And we actually think that will be really good for publicity for the unit, and actually encourage women to come to us and hopefully birth in the unit or have a home birth as well with the team, because that's always on the cards as well.
Yes.
So that's what we need. We feel we need a little bit of publicity, and that'll be even more of a kickstart. But we're very excited. The team of 6 girls and the lead are very, very committed to birth in Hartlepool and midwifery-led care. So it's real positive. We're very excited and pleased with how it's gone.
Great. Well, it is. And to actually not give the opportunity of Hartlepool people to have their babies born in Hartlepool was atrocious, actually, and I think I used that word before. So it's as I say, it's really good news. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm pleased.
Maybe you're asking my question about how many babies have been born in the unit. Is it just one? Is that right?
Yes. So we started to book in September. So consequently, it's a longer term vision. But the first baby was born in February, and we've currently got 96 ladies on the caseload for that team.
On the book.
So they're receiving all their prenatal and postnatal care in Hartlepool, and we will endeavour for those ladies to deliver in the unit based on the discussions that we've had through the presentation.
And of course, COVID introduced a year ago this weekend, and that's timing with some of the births.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've really loved that presentation, and I'm so excited for women in this town who are going to have the opportunity to have their babies here. That's a wonderful thing. But I think, if anything, the thing that I've picked up on more than anything in that presentation was a simple word where somebody talked about a kinder level of care. And I think that is so important. I think for any woman going into hospital to have a baby, I think it's a very scary time. I think it's a very anxious time. And I think it's harder still if you're doing it by yourself. And so I think to have women there who are going to, ensure that these women feel valued and cared for, that changes the whole of their birthing experience, and they'll be able to tell other, parents to be what a wonderful experience having a baby in that unit has been for them. And isn't that just a really powerful thing?
Absolutely.
That's just an amazing thing, and I'm so excited for women who are pregnant and are choosing to go to this unit to have their babies, because I think their experience compared to other places where there's so many women having babies at the same time, I just think it makes a more bespoke service, and it makes them feel really, really special and important. And if any time in your life you should feel special and important, it's when you're having a baby. And so I think that's wonderful. I think it's a wonderful thing. So thank you so much. It's really good news.
That's lovely. I think you've actually summed it up lovely there. That's exactly what we want it to be.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful. And if that works, then credit to everybody involved. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Joan?
Hi, Chair. Yeah, so just to say as well, I think it's very positive to see the work that's been undertaken to reduce the health inequalities and to try and endeavour to increase the number of mums that are actually eligible to deliver in the unit, because obviously as we stand, those numbers are quite small in terms of the overall population. But it's reassuring to see that work's ongoing to try and ensure that more mums will be fit and healthy enough to be delivered in a midwife-led unit going forward.
There's also some planned developments around parent education as well. Some of the midwives have been trained in some special techniques as hypnobirthing, so we'll be hoping to offer that once the COVID restrictions are lifted a little bit, where we can do some sort of bespoke sessions with women. We've also planning to do some around the population health and our active hospital initiatives, and that's something called beach bumps, we're going to call it, and it's going to be a walk along the beach with our midwives from the continuity care team with mums, either antenatally or postnatally, and that's something we want to promote, and that is about improving health for women, not just like their physical but their mental health as well. It's about meeting moms as well, so it's that social side of it as well, which women have been missing really with COVID. So we have got a lot of plans sort of on the back burner. So once this COVID restrictions lift a little bit, we'll be able to start those sort of things.
Rosie?
Oh, sorry, I've still got my hand up. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
I apologise.
No problem whatsoever. On birth certificates, I mean, a lot of people have their babies at North Tees, and there's nothing birth certificate on postcodes or Hartlepool whatsoever on the birth certificate. So I contacted 2 Prime Ministers to try and change that. Got a reply from David Cameron, but not from Boris Johnson. But again, that will be in COVID times a year ago. So I'll try again.
Okay.
So see what happens with that.
Good luck with that, Jed.
Very good information now, and as you say, it's very good news for mums and Hartlepool. So
we'd just like to thank you for inviting us today.
Yes.
We're really
excellent.
with the response, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we move on to 6.5, ICS, Integrated Care Strategy. Is that from Karen?
It is, yes, thank you, Chair.
Hello, Karen.
Hiya. So
Hi.
this, the documents that you've been provided, the purpose of me coming today around the ICS update was to provide you an update in relation to the Integrated Care System consultation document that was released in December, and the work that done the Clinical Commissioning Group, so the CCG, our approach in relation to the consultation document itself and our response to that, and also the work that we done with our member practices. So the document itself, you'll see it's a 38-page document. It's quite a read. It is a consultation document. It was released in December, and it was called The Next Steps in Building Integrated Care Systems Across England. And it outlined the steps in relation to the NHS around developing a whole system approach in relation to the NHS as opposed to individual organisation working. So the CCG, as with other organisations, was asked to comment and consult upon the documentation, and we undertook staff engagement across all of our staff groups. So not only those employed directly in the CCG, but bearing in mind the CCG is a member organisation made up of all of our practices across Tees Valley, of which there are 80. So we consulted with all of our
80.
Yes, across the whole of the Tees Valley. So we undertook engagement with our member practices, with our staff. We cited them on the document, and we were able to collate a number of views and inform our organisational response as a CCG. Our accountable officer also liaised directly with local authority chief executives and with other groups to ensure that they were aware of the consultation document, although they had been written directly to advise them of that, to make sure that there was a response provided. So since the consultation document was provided, and that's what we intended to provide today through audit and governance, there has been a white paper now released, and that was released in February. So the white paper is available for everyone to see in terms of following the consultation, what the proposals for change now are. It's important in terms of the document, there's two key elements in relation to the change, and it talks about integration within the NHS, but it also talks about greater collaboration between the NHS and local government, and it also focuses on the place-based approach and being key in terms of the future approach in relation to delivery of the NHS. The white paper has to now be read as bill in the House of Commons, and it has to receive royal assent prior to this becoming an act, and the expectation is that that will happen early next year. Obviously from our CCG perspective, it does impact on the CCG, but Dave, our accountable officer, David Gallagher, has advised that he will continue and has an absolute commitment to continue to engage partners throughout the process, and as we learn next steps in relation to what that means around the formation and the proposal of the integrated care system becoming the legal entity for the NHS as we move forward. So that's all I intended to cover today, Chair, because we're still awaiting further information, and it really was, the purpose was to advise you of the steps that we've taken in relation to our approach to the consultation itself.
Thanks very much. Again, it's interrupted by COVID with all the timelines or whatever. We've got April 2021 and September 2021. So, as you say, it's on the line of House of Commons regulations and procedures.
Yeah.
Okay. So any comments or questions? No? Well, come back again.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Chair.
Karen. Yeah. So we move on to 7.1, REPA.
Hello, Chair. It's me.
Is that Dave?
Just to give. This is just a very brief report, one of our regular reports that members will receive. The quarterly report as we're required to submit in accordance with the regulations, and just to inform members that again there's been there's a nil return on the REPA response for the last quarter up until the 1st of March.
Thanks very much. Accept the report.
Yeah,
thanks very much.
Yeah.
Number 8, the minutes of the meeting, Health and Wellbeing Board on the 7th of December 2020. Can you receive those? Yeah. Nothing on 9. Right. Number 10, receive the minutes of the meeting, Safer Hartlepool Partnership on the 22nd of January 2021. Receive those. Okay. There's nothing on 11 or 12. So moving to any of the business. Got one item at the moment. Claire Wilson is attending this meeting this morning, and I think she's retiring from the Audit and Governance Committee as an independent person. I can't Claire Wilson is a very esteemed person, particularly on the Audit and Governance Committee. I mean, she had a baptism of fire chairing a meeting last year, and that was well done, and it was very efficient and professional. We're looking for other people for independent person in the next year. We had a meeting a couple of days last week, and we've got some people in there who would be very good and very able. Good wishes for Claire Wilson. And now, any comments from the other members about her work in the Audit and Governance? Very well done, and good in the future. Claire. Brenda?
Yeah, I just want to add my best wishes, Claire. I hope to see you physically one day, in bumping into you as we normally do. I've known Claire for a long time.
Oh, Brenda's
Rose. What's happening?
Yeah, it appears Brenda's link is frozen, Chair.
Okay. Come back from Brenda or Leslie?
I meant we.
Oh, no.
Oh, she's back.
Brenda.
No.
IT glitches.
We're doing so well.
Chair, I think if you just move on to Leslie and Claire.
Yeah, Leslie.
I just want to endorse what you've said, Jed. I've sat with Claire for all the time I've been on Audit and Governance, and it's been really lovely to work with her. And I think last year she did extraordinarily well, despite the requests that were being thrown at her, and she did it with aplomb and with dignity and grace. Maybe one of the people wouldn't have. So I would just like to again say thank you very much, and she'll be very much missed. But enjoy retirement.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah. Okay, any comments or whatever?
Claire?
Well, I know Claire, so I see him
Chair,
regularly around the corner.
Chair, I think Claire would like to come in.
Say again.
I think Claire would like to make a comment.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, just thank you for the good wishes. I'm only retiring because the term is up, but that's fair enough because I think it's been 7 or 10 years, and I suppose the risk is that you become too chummy, too much at home on the council. So that's fair enough, and I hope the next person enjoys it, finds it as interesting as I have. Yes, I was a bit surprised last year about the chairing the meeting. I remember Joan gave me some words to say, which involved something like the great privilege of chairing this meeting or something like that. And I said, well, it's not a privilege. I don't look upon it as that. I know it would be, I'm sure, but it was a privilege. But I didn't feel it at the time. But thank you all very much, and wish you all the best for the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Take it in your stride, Claire. Okay.
Chair, before you conclude as well, I just think it's worth highlighting that there are a number of members who won't be standing again. I'm sure you would like to wish them well as well as we close the final meeting in the municipal year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly Leslie, she said, she's not standing in the next election. Every year, people produce fake news in the election campaign, standing or not. So Leslie said 2 years I won't stand, and she's back with the very welcome in Audit and Governance Committee last year as well as vice chair. I value her judgment and expertise particularly, and it's very, very good vice chair. Somebody said to me when I was appointed chair that they want another person as vice chair, and I said no, I want Leslie Hamilton. So well done.
Can I just jump in, guys? Thank you for that, Jed. And it's been a real joy sitting alongside you in the audit and governance meetings, through the good ones and the bad, it has to be said. And so I thank you for that. And I've really enjoyed being a ward councillor. It is a privilege and an honour. But you reach a point in your life where you want your life back, and I want my life back. And so and to return to a life of normality, if there is such a thing, after COVID. And I suppose for me, the people I will miss most are the officers who I would like to call my friends. They are a wonderful bunch of people. I could name you all individually, but I think you all know who you are. You've kept me afloat and kept me educated and entertained on occasions. But we'll talk about that another day. And so I suppose if I miss anything from council, it will be you guys, because I've spent so much time in your esteemed company, and for that it's been joyful, and I suppose that will be the thing that I miss most. And I hope this is not the end. I hope that we can continue to remain in touch, because you meet some really lovely people in life and they are few and far between, and so you want to keep them close when you're not there. And so I think on that score, I will say no more and say thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz.
Any other members on the Audit and Governance Committee? Good luck in the elections, May the 6th, and then see what happens after the election in May. Okay. So there was no meetings scheduled, obviously. We're in Perda at the end of this weekend. So it's a very enjoyable 2 years for chair of the Audit and Governance Committee, and see what happens in the future. So close the meeting at 12:12, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.